Okay, so today we're going to be doing a front left CV shaft on this quad. We're going to be showing you step by step on how to do it, and this works for various years and different brands of machines. It's generally the same setup and work that needs to be done to do each. What you'll need is a hammer, pry bar, side cutters or needle nose pliers, 14 mil wrench, 17 mil socket, 14 mil socket, and then either some electric tools or hand tools. New cotter pins unless you're able to save the old ones and not damage them when removing, and a 30 mil socket and or a crescent wrench, pipe wrench if you don't have these where you're at. So step one is to jack up the machine, get the tire off the ground and remove the tire. Okay, so now that we removed the tire with the 17 mil socket, first step is to go to the lower ball joint nut and remove the cotter pin that is holding the nut in place. Use a pair of side cutters or needle nose. Straighten out these tabs, they're usually bent down. Straighten it out, tap it through a little bit so the head comes through. And you're able to use the side cutters or needle nose and just pry it out like so. After that, you want to get your 17 mil socket, remove it. Now what you're going to do is with a pry bar and a hammer, you want to tap the lower control arm right here where the ball joint is going through. You do not want to hit this ball joint or these threads. That's a big no-no. So only hit right here while applying downward force on the control arm. I'm going to put this in here, pry down, and pop the lower control arm off the ball joint. Now we're going to move to the axle nut. Same thing, large cotter pin. So you're going to pry the tabs over. Sometimes you need to squeeze the cotter pins together on the flat side to get it to tap through the hole a little bit, and then you're able to grab the head of the cotter pin. As you can see, this cotter pin broke, and that's why it's good to have a new one. Then you want to get your 30 mil socket, channel locks, pipe wrench, crescent wrench, whatever you have. A lot of people don't have 30 mil. The axle nut. You want to make sure it pushes back and it's not stuck in that hub. So now what we're going to do here is to remove the lower shock bolt. As you can see, there's a lot of mud here, which tends to happen. So grab a screwdriver, pry bar, stick, and remove the mud from around the nut and the head of the bolt. Now this is the 14 mil. 2 wrenches on either side, or a ratchet on one side, wrench on the other side will work just fine. So now that the bolt and nut are out of the shock, what we're going to do is lift the shock up, lift the hub away from the axle until it pops out. Now with this whole assembly here, you can get a ratchet strap or a bungee cord. You can hold the whole assembly out of the way. Just find a secure enough spot. So that allows us to deal with the shaft. So now in behind here, there is a axle seal, a dust seal, and it sticks out past the housing. So you don't want to just put a pry bar in here and try to hammer the shaft out, because you will damage the seal and then the diff will end up leaking all the fluid out. So what you want to do, there's a ridge right here on the shaft. You want to take a pry bar and pry like this from one side, then on the other side, same thing. There's a little notch that you can pry off of. Sometimes these shafts can be fairly stubborn when removing them. There's a C-clip on the inside that holds it inside of the diff. There we go, that one came out. No, not too bad. So you can see the seal here I was talking about, how it actually sticks out of the housing. So if you were to put a pry bar or screwdriver and just hammer in to pop that shaft out, you're going to damage the seal, which is not what you want to do. Now we're going to lube this up a little bit for reinstall the new shaft, just to make sure that it doesn't go in dry and damage the seal. You can use any type of wheel bearing grease, any type of grease, water resistant grease, dielectric grease, whatever you have. Just put it on, make sure it's not going in dry. So here's our new shaft we will be installing. It comes with a supplied washer and castle nut, but it is a different shape and size than the old one. So for a little bit of prevention, we are not going to be using this, and we're going to be using the old one for reinstall. If the old one is damaged, or these are broken off, or it's became stripped, then we would be using this. So for installing, what we're going to do is take the outside of the shaft, put the nut on, and then we're going to take this part, install it straight in as possible, and sometimes to get this C-clip to seat inside the diff, you need to give this a little tap. Nothing crazy, just enough to get it to pop in there. You'll feel the splines line up. Now the shaft doesn't move, it's turning the other tire. You can try to pop it in without the hammer. We'll do it with. So compress the shaft as much as you can. Just give it a couple taps. Now remove that nut off the end. And what we're going to do is slide this whole thing into the back of the hub so it comes out here, and then when we get it all put in together, we're going to lower the lower ball joint back in to the control line. Okay, so now we're going to put the CV shaft into the back of the hub and out the brake rotor. So just remove it off your tie strap or whatever you have in place to hold up the hub. You're going to lift it up, bend the shaft till it comes into the hole. Slowly work it through so the splines all line up, just like that. And now once it comes through all the way, just line up that bottom ball joint with that control arm and place it back down. Okay, so now what you're going to do is reinstall the nut onto the lower ball joint. You can see there's a hole going all the way through it, and there's another one on this side also going all the way through. So after you tighten it up, you want to tighten it enough where these holes are going to line up like that, so you can pass the cotter pin through. Just like that. If you're able to save the cotter pin, great. If not, reuse the old one, pass it through, and then you're going to bend it down and around. And that's it. We'll then tighten up the shock. Make sure there's no mud inside here, because it can prevent the shock from going all the way down to line up the bolt. Lift up on the whole assembly to get the holes to line up. Put that on. Now we'll install the axle nut, same thing. There's holes all the way through it to have the cotter pin line up. So we'll reinstall the nut. Same thing. So now that all our stuff is tight, cotter pins have been installed, the shock, the axle nut, and the ball joint, it's time to reinstall the tire. Do not over tighten these. You can break the studs fairly easy. These are only, it's about 40 foot-pounds. So if you have a torque wrench that can go to 40 foot-pounds, then feel free to tighten it up with that, or just snug them up and make sure you're checking them throughout the day or when you ride it or after you ride it. And that is it.